Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Shit's Hard. I'm your host, Amber, and today we're talking about therapy, because that shit is hard, okay? Ain't no denying that one. We're going to be talking about how therapy is for everyone, I really do believe, why I decided to go to therapy, pandemic therapy, and virtual versus in-person therapy, because that's like just totally a thing right now. But let's get into it because I'm really excited about this episode. I've been thinking about it for a while. This one's been in the outlines for a minute. But I don't know, it hasn't been relevant, I guess, lately, or other things have been relevant. But now it is feeling relevant. No, but I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. I just had a little, yesterday, another one of those days where it's where am I going? Is this what I want to be doing? Am I getting any closer to where I want to be? Type of thing. What am I career-wise? What am I doing? And I think it's just all part of being in your 20s and not knowing what the fuck you're doing. And unfortunately, that's still going on for me. But yeah, let's get into it because I just think it's an important topic. And I'm excited to talk about it because I love talking about therapy, and mental health is so important. So yeah, let's get started. Deciding it's time to go. I feel like that's the starter point of therapy in your own journey to taking care of your mental health is really that integral step of just that one deciding factor of, oh shit, I can't do this by myself. And I absolutely had that. Mine was sophomore year of college. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think as a lot of people could agree, that alone was a very anxiety inducing part of life for anyone. It was just very everything was so unsure, and the pandemic was just very nobody knew what the fuck was going on. Your parents are going through something for the first time when you're going through it for the first time, and you look to them for what am I supposed to do? And they're I don't know. Nobody knew what the protocol was. So it was just I don't know. For me, it was very scary, anxiety inducing. And when I was in college, it was college was a very germ-tastic kind of place, if a kid got COVID at college, it was probably going to spread like wildfire. And so then I think a lot of college kids were stressing over the idea of going home and how do the holidays look, and what if you want to see your family but you don't want to bring them COVID. And that was a very scary thing too, that nobody had ever worried about before. Obviously if you have the cold or the flu, it was yeah, you don't want to give it to anybody, but it didn't feel life-threatening, or it just didn't feel as real. Obviously it can be to, depending, but I don't know. It just everything was so new. And for me, that was just that was the time. It was my sophomore year of college in February or March. I remember I was at the rec center and I was on the treadmill and I was watching they, how they have TVs on the treadmills. I had headphones in, but I was just watching, reading the news thing about this virus that had broken out in China and kind of just what was going on and how things were shutting down. And it was just this feels a little weird. And then it was a month later, a couple weeks later that, we got the call, or I think Ohio State actually was the first that in Ohio that was we're sending everyone home for 2 weeks. And then Kent State was we're sending everyone home. And it was just holy shit, this is really happening. And it was very scary. And that was the first time that I was I think I want to go to therapy because I want to talk to somebody about this. And even that was a little bit, I don't know, it's weird making that decision. I can't do this by myself. I'm going to go get help. And even though, of course, there are social stigmas around it, nobody in my life was really, you need to go to therapy. But even still, I think you judge yourself a little bit. You hold yourself against that society, standard of telling people you're going to therapy. I don't know, because it just felt oh, there's something wrong with you. And nobody in my life was treating me that way. But it was I was telling myself that people were going to think that about me. And I didn't like that. That was what was tough. It was it was the little things that made it hard, where oh, I was going to leave a function with people to go to my appointment. And then it was that awkward, do I tell them where I'm going? Do I be hey, sorry, I have an appointment, I'm going to therapy, bye? Or do I just say, oh, I have an appointment? And it was but it was even weirder to hide it, because then it felt I'm contributing to the stigma that it's a weird thing to do. So I don't know. It was hard for me. I didn't know a lot of people who went to therapy at that time. there was one girl that I had spoken to in my program who did, and that made me feel a lot better. And she was very casual about it, and that's what made me feel even better, was like, it doesn't have to be this whole big thing, you know? It doesn't have to be this like, oh, you're like, you know what I mean? Like, you can just go, you can just talk to someone, and it can be very casual. And then if you're with people and you need to go to your appointment, you can just be like, hey, I'm going to therapy. And it doesn't need to be this whole big thing that in my head I was making it this big thing. So if you're thinking about going, absolutely recommend it. And I think if you're surrounded by the right people, you won't feel like as ostracized as you might think that you will. Because I just really thought that it was going to make things awkward and people were going to be weird around me. And it really wasn't. I mean, I think I stand by, I'm surrounded by people that treat me right. So I didn't have that problem, luckily. A lot of people in my life were encouraging and supportive. I will say college is tough because this was, again, right when the pandemic, what the fuck? Right when the pandemic was happening, and everyone's like, oh, you're in college, go to free therapy. And I was like, okay. And so I had called them and I was like, hey, you know, I want to go to therapy, whatever. And they were like, okay. And they'd ask me a few questions and kind of ask the severity of the situation. And we're basically like, maybe we'll be able to get you in next semester. And like I said, this was in February. So the spring semester ends in May. The next semester for me didn't even start until August. So I was kind of like, okay. It's like, now, granted, I do think we've always kind of had a shortage of mental health like support. I don't think that, like, I'm not mad, obviously. Like, if there just wasn't enough therapists, there's just not enough therapists. And again, I felt very lucky that my parents were like, go ahead and find a place off campus. We'll pay for it. But therapy's expensive. Unrelated. I mean, not unrelated, but like, that's a whole nother conversation, really. But yeah, I think especially during the pandemic, a lot of people were wanting to go to therapy. A lot of people were struggling mentally. And I think it's wonderful that everyone wanted to go, but it kind of made it even harder to get in. So that was definitely kind of a struggle. And then I had started going to see someone. She was in that town. And then the pandemic really like shut everything down. And so then she was like, hey, like we're going to have to move to virtual sessions, which obviously not a problem at that time in the world. Everything was moving to remote. But at the same time, if you've ever been to therapy or if you've ever talked about your feelings, it's just a very like personal experience. And for me, I needed to I was struggling with other people knowing what I was struggling with for some reason. And so I had roommates at college, and if I went home to my family, then I had family there. And so it was difficult for me to have a virtual therapy session knowing that other people are in the home. And mind you, these are people that I trust and I love, and they would never like listen in or anything like that. Like, no. But it just like for me mentally, it was hard to get in the headspace of like self-help and being able to say what you want to say. Because therapy's tough like that. Even when you're just like at their office alone with them, it's tough to say what you want to say out loud. And then let alone being in your own home where like other people are there and you can just like hear them walking around or something. I don't know. It's difficult. Virtual therapy is difficult. And I think when I was in college, I was able to get away with it because my boyfriend was living alone at the time. And so I asked him if he would like leave on Thursday at 3 p.m. or something and just be gone. I would just schedule appointments when he wasn't there. And so that way I could like be there by myself and have a little bit of privacy. But even so, I noticed I liked going to in-person therapy for a few reasons. One being privacy. It's just less of a concern. You just don't have to like think about, everything's between you and the therapist. But also I think just like headspace wise, like a lot of things mentally, I think we all know, are hard to say out loud. And just the physical environment of a therapist's office, I think for me, it was nice to have a physical space to go to that was for that purpose of like letting out things that you want to talk about that are maybe difficult to talk about and nothing else. So I was never in that space for any other reason, if that makes sense. Like environment's important. I think we all know environment's important to your mental health. And for me, it was like, even if I was alone at my boyfriend Corbin's apartment doing therapy and he wasn't there, I knew he wasn't, he was off doing whatever. It was still like this, I'm in this living room that I relax in and that I hang out with people in. And so it just was like, I don't know, it was nice to have the therapist's office as like just a space for just that. And that's all you do in that space. And you don't do anything else. I don't hang out there. I don't relax there. I don't eat there. I'm just there for that purpose. And it was easier for me to get in the mindset of that. But things have changed a lot since then. And I think virtual therapy is also so more accessible too. I think that's a really good pro to it if you're open to it. I know Corbin had actually tried like texting type of therapy. Like it was like you're just texting like it's through an app, obviously, but it's like you're just texting like a therapist. And so it's not like verbal at all. So that could be a good option if you can't get in person anywhere and you don't want to do like a Zoom call where you're verbally talking. I don't know. He said it was fine. I don't know that I would go for that, but whatever works for you, you know, or I mean, you really don't know till you try it. I've never tried it, so I don't actually know if I would like it, but yeah, like, I don't know, virtual therapy, I'm struggling now because I have kind of been thinking about going back and seeing a therapist since I've been in California, just for whatever. I've been doing mentally a lot better than I ever was when I first decided to go. And I think that's because you get out of therapy what you put into it. So they give you things to do and things to try at home. But if you don't take it home with yourself, you're not going to probably see any results. But I had learned like ways to mitigate and kind of work through things on my own. You know, I think a lot of like things that you'll learn in therapy are, I mean, they'll usually recommend like journaling or walking. Walking is really good when your mind is racing to like slow down. I think journaling is good because it makes your thoughts kind of slow down. It helps you get them out on the paper better. I've heard walking is good because it's just like, it's like your body's forced to be focusing on that as well as your thoughts. So they can't just like race and spiral. But yeah, physical activity. And I think just like prioritizing yourself was something that really helped me with my own like mental health journey, was like things like physical activity, exercise, food, what you eat, only affects you directly. So like what you're eating every day, it doesn't really affect your partner or your family or friends or anything like that. Maybe indirectly, but directly. Like it doesn't directly benefit anybody except you. And I think that's where my own mental health journey, I started to realize like how much I needed to prioritize myself, because I'm the most important person in my life. I have to be. And I think that's just like something a lot of people struggle with, along with myself, is like doing things that just benefit yourself, because people in a lot of ways are selfless, I think. And it's hard to love yourself. I think a lot of people struggle with that. And like I said, yeah, like how many activities do you do that just benefit you? You know what I mean? And you're just doing it for yourself. And I say they only directly benefit you. They do indirectly affect the people that you love, because I think if you're taking care of yourself mentally, physically, maybe you're doing physical activity to reduce your stress, you're trying to eat a little bit better to mitigate your own health concerns. And I think with those things, you'll see enhanced mood, more energy throughout the day, which in turn will then indirectly affect the people that you love, your friends and family, because you'll be in a better mood. You'll have more energy to spend more time with them, more quality time with them. So, that's all like kind of, I didn't mean to go down that like little rabbit hole, but what I meant was like, we have to be more selfish, I think. And when I taught that to myself, it really helped me. You have to be more selfish. I will live by that. Be more selfish. Do things that only benefit you. And I think like when you really think about that and stop and pause and think about how many things you do that benefit other people, like you'll really realize like, well, yeah, like what am I doing for me? And I just mean like in small ways, like, I don't know. Like if you knew that there was something you could do for your partner or your friends or your parents or your siblings or just people that you care about that would like give them more energy throughout the day, or improve their overall mood, or just improve their all general health and well-being, I think that we would all do it pretty quickly. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy, no-brainer that we would do things for the people that we love, especially if it were like not too hard. It wasn't really demanding from us. So it's kind of like, why would you not do that for yourself? I don't know. When I started prioritizing myself and doing things that didn't benefit anybody else, that was when I saw like the best like mental results. And that's the same thing as working out. I think when you have motivation to work out that is revolved around other people, such as you want to work out so that other people think you are hot or attractive, it's just not quite as motivating. And it probably isn't going to get you out of bed in the morning, at least for me. But when I started to work out to reduce my own stress levels, again, I went to therapy mostly for anxiety and anxious thoughts. And I noticed when I was working out more routinely, I had less of those thoughts and I was less anxious. And I started to work out with that motivation in mind of like, I'm going to have a better week. I'm going to have more energy throughout the week. I'm going to be in a better mood. I'm going to be less stressed, less anxious. This workout's going to help me alleviate whatever's going on throughout the week. It was more motivating to get up in the morning. Like it's motivating to do things for yourself with that kind of outcome in mind, with that kind of benefit in mind of if your goal is to better yourself mentally, I don't know. It feels like for me, it takes me farther, I guess, is all I'm going with that. But yeah, therapy's a tough one. It's like, how often should you go? I think that was an interesting thing that I struggled with at the end of my first session. It's like, okay, do you want to schedule another? And I was like, I don't know. It's like, do I need that? And that was definitely something I struggled with, especially because my therapy wasn't free. It was costing money. Again, I wasn't paying for it. We got to be transparent here and talk about everything. My parents were paying for it, but somebody was. And yeah, we'll get even more transparent. My therapy was about $80 with the copay. That was in Ohio. Again, not California. I would assume it would be more expensive out here. So yeah, I struggled with like going back because I felt like I needed to be doing bad enough to go, if that makes sense. Like I didn't want my parents to spend that $80 if it wasn't like I really was desperate, which is obviously like very ass backwards because hopefully I'm getting better through this therapy and not like needing it as much or not feeling as down in the dumps. But that doesn't mean I should stop going either. So, and again, my parents didn't like care. They weren't the ones who were like, don't be going unless you need to. They were not like that at all. They were like, if you even have the thought of you want to go, go. If you have the thought you want to make the appointment, make the appointment. And that's really how I think you should be thinking about it. But that's something that I struggled with was, am I doing bad enough? And I always kind of went on an as needed basis, and that worked for me. I think it's also about just figuring out what works for you. If you want to go weekly, and also if you're in the midst of dealing with something like maybe you're going to talk about your family or something, and there's like something continuously changing and going on, I think that's good reason to continuously go more routinely. I personally kind of would just text them, and I probably ended up going like twice a month, maybe bi-weekly, I guess. And it worked for me. And there were other weeks that I went every week in a row for a couple of weeks. And then there were times where I took like 2 months off and then went back. Because also like your life moves in seasons. It's the same thing with therapy. Unfortunately, most things aren't linear. You're not just going to like go to therapy, and then you're better and you never have to go again. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It tends to kind of go up and down, and maybe there's like a long season where you don't go and there's no shame in going back after that either. But I do think the goal is hopefully like in general, things are moving up as to like, as things come at you and get worse, maybe hopefully, you've learned a little more skills to help you get through those things as well. At least that's how like I'm feeling about it. But what I'm struggling with now is I really liked my therapist in Ohio a lot. And I was actually only seeing her remotely because of the pandemic. I was seeing one in person, then it went remote, and then, I don't know, she couldn't see me anymore. So I saw a new one, and I only met her online. I actually never even met her in person. But she was really cool. She helped me a lot. I think last time I talked to her was back in August because I was struggling with moving out here. That was like my last time going and kind of like mentally struggling was like moving across the country. And is this a good idea? And I'm going to be all the way like away from my family, and my family didn't really seem too excited about it. They were not too supportive. So that was why I saw her last, was because I was like, I know this is the right move for me, but it's starting to feel like it's not. And that's just because of everybody else. It wasn't because of me, but yeah, I haven't talked to her since. And also I kind of want to talk to her because I'm like, I think she'd be proud of me. I think she'd be like so happy to hear that I'm out here and I'm doing good. But I also have 3 roommates. And so I'm struggling with like, because I probably could still see her. Again, we only saw each other virtually. But it's like, I don't know how to make, like, I can't just schedule appointments when I have 3 roommates, like, always coming and going. And I know I would not be able to have a good quality session with other people here. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is like, should I just try to figure it out on my own? Should I reach out to her and see what she thinks? I don't know. Because I would like to, like, and I liked virtual therapy. I thought it was fine. Again, I thought going in person was better, but I don't think I was like not getting anything out of virtual. I thought it was like very useful for me and myself and the things that I was going through. But also I was at a different place. Ever since I did virtual therapy, I was doing much better than when I started. So I don't know. You just got to do what works for you. I also think like if I tried to just find a new therapist here in California, it'd probably be so expensive. It would probably be so expensive. And I just don't want to look into that. Plus, one big thing in therapy is finding a therapist that works for you, finding someone that you can open up to and be comfortable enough around to kind of be vulnerable to. And I already have that. So like, I don't want to look for it again and then try a new therapist and then have it be expensive because we're in California and then also not get along with them. So then have to try somebody else. You know what I mean? Like I hope I don't have to do that. But we'll see. We will see. So shit we're working on this week is I'm working on journaling more. I've been journaling like roughly every 3 days, which isn't bad. I think it's okay. But I'd like to get that to daily. I'm trying to do it like every night before I go to bed. And just prioritizing me time and prioritizing doing things that just benefit me. On that note, I do want to add in something I've noticed about myself is if I want to do something like see a movie or go to this garden or whatever, if nobody in my life, like my boyfriend, my friends, can go with me, then I just won't go. So that's another thing we're working on this week is that spending more time with me, prioritizing me, because if it's something that I want, then I'm going to do it regardless. And there's no shame in doing things alone at all. If it's something you want to do, I think it's a really great like show of independence to be able to do those things without fear of judgment. Like somebody's going to be like, oh my God, like you're here alone. And I'm like, I think it's a statement to be somewhere alone because I think it'd be really hard to do that. And I don't know if I'd be able to do it. So I think it's really great that people can take themselves to dinner and do things like that. I want to get there. That's also shit we're working on. Is prioritizing yourself and being more selfish. Always be selfish. Do things for you. So, I'll leave some questions down below. So, have you ever been to therapy? And do you struggle with prioritizing yourself? Let me know, because I feel like a lot of people do. So, let's talk about it. But that's the end of my episode. That brings us to a close. But I do want to end on, if you are struggling mentally, please do see a therapist and know that I am on your side. I'm encouraging you and I'm not judging you at all. I know there's a social stigma around it, but you making a choice to better yourself is always going to be the right move. So good luck. And I'm here for you. So thanks again for joining me on this episode of Shit's Hard. I'm your host, Amber, and I will see you on the next one. This shit is hard.